starts early at Doyobaru, missionary flying base for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Indonesia. From this eastern province in New Guinea, called Irian Jaya, intrepid pilots carry the gospel message over thousands of miles and across terrain often described as the most treacherous in the world. Careful preparation for the day's flying is essential.
Pre-flight inspection is really important. There's not very many places to make an emergency landing. And so on our pre-flight every morning, we check to make sure that the engine is in an airworthy condition, that our fuel is where we want it and without any water, and also that the airframe is airworthy, that it's not going to come apart while you're flying. And you just check for mainly general items to make sure that that airplane is ready to meet the demanding challenge for it.
Joyce Salyers knows that her husband Fred will face many challenges today as he carries needed supplies into the rugged mountains. The sturdy Cessna 185 is an ideal airplane for taking off and landing on the many so-called runways, which are literally strips of ground carved out of the jungle by manual labor. Fred taught flying skills at college. Now he needs every one of them in this country. Crash helmets are worn, as well as other precautions taken. Leroy Kelm, senior pilot in Irian Jaya, looks forward to the cooler altitudes.
Father, we thank Thee for this nice day, and we ask for a safe flight and good weather. In Jesus' sake, amen.
Sentani is the government airport, only a few miles from Doyobaru. The long paved runway is ideal for the Rockwell Aero Commander to lift its heavy load skywards. Although now aging and due for replacement, the Commander has been the great workhorse of the fleet. Thousands of pounds of cargo and hundreds of people have been transported to distant areas at very little cost to the church. With very few navigational aids in the country, local knowledge of the valleys and mountain passes is essential.
When you first start flying in a jungle area, such as Irian Jaya, I think possibly you do think of some of the dangers that are involved in flying out here. Where you're going to put it if the engine does quit or something happens. But after you fly a while, I guess you become more confident in the machine that you're flying. Also, we are out here for a purpose, and that is to spread the gospel to the people. The airstrips in Irian Jaya are virtually just cut out of the middle of the jungle. They're a lot of times are very short. Since we have a lot of rain, a lot of them are very soft also. So on an approach to a lot of our airstrips, if your airspeed is too high, there's a possibility you could slide off the end of the runway. So you have to be what we call right on the target when you land, because there's not a second chance.
Carabaga, precariously perched on the side of a mountain. It's the only means for bringing in needed supplies for thousands of people in the surrounding valleys. Sometimes suspicious, but mostly friendly, the local people look forward to the arrival of the huge metal bird and its helpful cargo.
Because there are no roads in this part of the country, the airplanes have been a real service to the people of the area. And without the airplanes that have been donated by the Quiet Hour, it would be virtually impossible to reach many of the people.
The Bailey, or Cannibal Valley, was made famous by an American nurse's forced landing during World War II. It is home to thousands of Dani tribesmen, renowned for their fierce battles and previous cannibalism. Their world has been transformed by the miracle of flight, yet most of the old animistic customs remain. This area still presents a great challenge to the Adventist Church with its message for the total man. Wamena is the center of government activities in the Baleen Valley. At a few thousand feet above sea level, The climate is pleasant, but cool by tropical standards, especially if you dress like the Danis. Leroy meets with the local missionaries to see if he can help with transportation or communication problems. The Dani people are stocky and strong, but suffer many respiratory diseases. Their villages are walled against intrusion by both man and beast.
Mereka ini belum ke gereja di Wamena?
Ya, mereka ini sudah kenal gereja. Sudah pergi ke gereja, tapi hari ini mereka tidak ke gereja.
Oh, dan mereka bukan Advent, betul?
Ya,
Low, thatch-roofed homes keep the heat in, but the smoky atmosphere brings racking coughs, pneumonia, and other problems. The Indonesian language is spoken throughout this land to communicate across the hundreds of native dialects. For their work to be effective, the pilots must master this unfamiliar tongue. Dedicated missionaries labor for their brothers with great enthusiasm, little pay, and many frustrations. Their rewards will be realized throughout eternity. The Wamena marketplace is common ground for an amazing variety of people, foods, goods, and smells. It is to here that many tribesmen from the hills flock, with the hope of selling their produce in order to buy such commodities as pots, pans, exotic delicacies like bread, and even cassette tape recorders. But clothes are not a high priority. It's only about an hour's flight back to another world, but it would take weeks of pushing through a green hell to walk it. Leroy's thoughts turn to Sharon's cooking and hopes he's not too late for breakfast.
You sure got away early this morning. How was your trip to Wamena?
Had a good trip and the weather was beautiful.
Where are you going now, Dad?
Got to go out to Costa Nueja before the weather gets bad. Well, I better get going now.
Have a nice day, Dad.
Bye, honey.
Take care.
Well, I'm very thankful for the Christian background, which has given me a strong faith in God. I really believe that the Lord is looking after Leroy each morning when he leaves. I commit him to the Lord and I place him in God's hands, and I trust that the Lord will work out his will, and if it's in his plan, to bring him back safely to me. Leroy's had a bad accident out here in Irian, and it was very hard to understand at the time. We kept thinking of the text, all things work together for good to those that love God. But what good could there be in wrecking the airplane? And we didn't understand for about 2 months, but it did come out that God did have a plan in it. And the worker that he was bringing out at the time was discouraged and was quitting the Lord's work. And when the airplane crashed, he took this as a sign that God was telling him. He wanted him to stay in that village. He didn't want him to leave. And we thought, would God wreck a $40,000 airplane just to keep this worker in a village? And we believe the answer is yes. If God wanted Thomas to stay in that village, he could wreck an airplane and do it.
The Cessna 185 has a tail dragger undercarriage, which makes it ideal for the dozens of short strips not suitable for the larger craft. It can carry 5 adult passengers, or around 1,000 pounds of cargo. Leroy uses it to ferry personnel and supplies to isolated missionaries and teachers. Doyle Baru Airstrip sees many such departures each day. Here there are hangar and workshop facilities, housing for pilots and mechanics, and a school with dedicated Christian teachers.
Some places where it takes an hour to fly, it would take up to 45 to 50 days to walk into this, and all you could be able to take was what you could haul on your back. So these airplanes have been a very effective tool for our work here in Irian.
Casanawaja airstrip is typical, short with a deceptive approach across the river, often wet and slippery, always requiring pilot concentration. The local pastor is waiting for mail and food supplies for his family. There are over 250 church members scattered around this area. Leroy's air supply line is greatly appreciated.
The flying in Irian Jaya is rewarding. There's a lot of hard work involved in it, but as you go into some of the remote villages or airstrips that we have, and the smiles of the people that you see when you land and the greetings that you get, and you know that their appreciation shines out through their faces.
The needs of this area are ever present and glaring. Churches falling into disrepair, for materials are expensive and difficult to get. Workers living in homes that are totally inadequate.
I realize there are many dangers in mission flying in this part of the world and the kind of country he has to fly over, some of the airstrips that he has to go into. Still, you can't just worry about it all the time. When I think of the many, many times Leroy takes off in a day and in a week, and you realize that someone very special is watching over them.
Most of the strips that we have been cut just out of a mountainside or out of the jungle in the lowlands. We call them bush strips, and they are very hard on aircraft.
Mach 60, Sierra Delta Fox on the ground.
At Bora Bora, the church has only about 50 members, but a faithful gospel teacher continues to instruct and demonstrate a better way. Leroy's encouraging visits are always welcome. The weather has held well today. There's just one more stopover before heading back to base. Many times, the pilots aren't so lucky. Large cloud buildups and heavy rain can give them a hard time.
Mach 60, Sierra Delta Fox.
Sierra Delta Fox, Mach 60, go ahead.
Sierra Delta Fox, 30 miles at this time. Estimating Doyabato in about
Okay, good. How's your weather out there?
That's real good, hon.
Okay, that's good. We'll see you a little later. Thank you.
Sierra Delta Fox.
Many times I think of Ken and Virginia Smith and the sacrifice that they made. It was quite a shock to us all when we realized that Ken was lost. Many times after this, when Leroy didn't come up on the radio for a while, of course you can't help but think of this, and there were some hard times. One time especially I remember when his radio had gone out, and I didn't hear him all day or even that night before he signed off, and that was a very sleepless night. There are dangers, I know, but it's not something that you just think of all the time that he's flying.
I sure don't see myself as an angel, but I know they're with me as I fly this aircraft over some of the most dangerous jungle in the world. In fact, I'm sure the Lord has been by my side and even saved my life on a few occasions. It sure has been up, Chris, but as we were coming out of that short strip at Munakania, we just couldn't outclimb the trees and we went into them.
It's a miracle, Leroy. You came out alive.
Miracles do happen sometimes, but regular maintenance is very necessary to keep these older airplanes in the air. A team of fine mechanics, both Indonesian and American, do a great job with a quick turnaround time.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Edu, can you turn mag switch on for me, please?
Rick Denslow came out to help for 1 year as a special service volunteer.
Fred, ready? Yeah, go ahead.
Chris and Fred carefully check each cylinder for compression and any leaks.
It's coming up nicely. Got about 75 over 80. Okay, that's okay. You can go ahead.
Come on, guys, get it closed up. The rain's coming.
But there's always the hazard of a tropical downpour. This is a land drenched by rain, and rushing rivers carve out canyons as they cascade wildly to the sea. Pastor Jimmy Jacobs is the local mission president. His work is to visit churches, pastors, teachers, schools, and members in isolated communities throughout the country. Without the mission airplanes, his work would be impossible. To him, these machines are not luxuries. They are his lifeline into the steaming jungle below.
Selamat Bapak, selamat bertemu Bapak. Waduh, senang sekali bisa tiba. Saudara Ishak, dia sudah 1 bulan di Jayapura ya.
To give a sympathetic ear and offer guidance at a one-to-one level strengthens the belief that here is a church interested in people. The flying angels symbol of Revelation 14 has become known as the mark of the caring, sharing mission.
In some of these countries where we operate these aircraft in the Far East, the entire program of the mission is dependent on the availability of those aircraft. The movement of the staff and workers, the evangelistic meetings, the bringing in of students to the schools, the building of our churches are all dependent upon the airplane being able to take these people and materials in and out of these rugged jungle strips.
Currently based in Kuching, Malaysia, is the Piper Aztec. John Tala and Dan Walter are bringing in students to the Universitas Kelabat at Manado.
So happy that we can join the mission aviation program here in Indonesia. We worked for 14 years on the Amazon River flying a lake amphibian that the flight hours so graciously helped us to obtain. But then we were asked to come and help with the program here in Indonesia, especially with this beautiful Aztec airplane. We've run into some remote churches who have not been visited for 4, 5, and 6 years. And with this airplane, we've been able to serve them. It's just been wonderful. And now we have, too, the privilege of working with Johnny Tala, our first Indonesian pilot. He's flying at this today. He has his master's degree in public health. His wife is a physician. And we're looking forward to some wonderful times with this team. It makes us feel so good to know that there have been so many wonderful, generous people, quiet hour listeners, who have made possible this equipment that has been well equipped to do the work that we're doing and to do it efficiently and safely.
Commercial airlines are expensive in these areas. Students can be brought from their homes to the university at a fraction of the cost they normally would have to pay. For many, it's their only chance for a Christian education.
It's only with these mission planes that we're able to open up these vast areas where there are thousands of people yet waiting to hear of Jesus coming.
I just want to express my appreciation to you members in North America for your continuing support to this vital aircraft ministry in the Far Eastern Division.
Flying angels? No. Just ordinary men and women doing a vital work in helping to carry the gospel message throughout this Muslim land. May they continue to do God's work.
Hayya al-falah.